When I was 22, a time that now feels like a distant memory, I secured a job as a night security guard at a sprawling steel plant in Pennsylvania. The position was straightforward enough: patrol the grounds, monitor the cameras, and ensure everything ran smoothly during the late hours. For the most part, it was an easy gig, but the overnight shifts could vary dramatically depending on your team. Some nights were monotonous, filled with idle chatter about birds and the latest local news, while others held the potential for unexpected excitement. I had been working at the plant for about a year, always with the same reliable team. We had built a camaraderie that made the long nights more bearable. That is, until one day when one of the senior guards announced he was leaving to be closer to his family. Naturally, the boss needed to find a replacement, and we all hoped the new recruit would be a solid addition. Competent, friendly, and easy to get along with. Instead, we were introduced to Parker. Parker was a decent worker, no doubt about that, but there was something unsettling about him, something that set him apart from the rest of us. He stood around 6 feet tall, with piercing dark eyes that seemed to scrutinize everything around him. His hair was cut short, and he sported a rough beard that added to his rugged appearance. What really caught our attention, though, was the peculiar scar on the right side of his neck. It looked like a patch of skin that was paler, pinker, and shinier than the rest, a stark contrast that made it impossible to ignore. When he removed his gloves, we noticed similar patches of scar tissue near his knuckles, deep pink and rough to the touch. We speculated that Parker had been in some sort of accident, perhaps a car wreck or an industrial mishap. It wasn't something anyone wanted to bring up, so we left it at that, assuming it was a story for another time. However, it wasn't Parker's scars that truly unnerved us. It was his demeanor. He was unnervingly quiet, speaking only when necessary, and even then, his English seemed strained, as if he were struggling to find the right words. His accent was distinctly northeastern Pennsylvania, reminiscent of Scranton or Wilkes-Barre, but his speech was cautious, almost hesitant, as if he feared each syllable might betray him. Parker was a bundle of nerves. He'd flinch at unexpected sounds, his eyes darting around whenever something startled him. Working in a steel plant meant there were plenty of loud noises during the day, but at night, even the slightest sound could set him off. The other guards joked that Parker might just snap and turn on us if he felt threatened enough, a sentiment that made everyone uneasy around him. Despite his quirks, Parker was a hard worker, and over time we began to accept him as one of our own, albeit with a healthy dose of caution. About 6 months into Parker's tenure, I found out I'd be working closely with him for an entire week of night shifts, just the two of us and a supervisor. The thought of spending a whole week alongside Parker was unsettling. Our supervisor would handle the security office, watching the cameras and munching on mini powdered donuts, leaving Parker and me to patrol the plant on foot. Normally, night shifts could be challenging, especially with the right crew, but with Parker, I felt like walking alongside him was more of a risk than dealing with any potential troublemakers trying to sneak onto the site. Reluctantly, I accepted the assignment. I wished I could say that working those nights with Parker was like a buddy cop movie, where we gradually warmed up to each other and became friends. But that wasn't the case. Instead, Parker's silence and strange behavior only intensified my unease. Whenever he sat in silence, staring into the darkness as if watching an invisible movie, he'd mutter to himself. I caught him doing this a few times, and it was clear he was angry about something. It made us all wonder if he was a ticking time bomb, someone who might just lose control at any moment. Despite my reservations, I tried to reach out to Parker, hoping to build some rapport. Maybe if I could get to know him better, he wouldn't pose such a threat. The second night shift we worked together, I decided to break the ice by asking him about his life before security. He was tight-lipped, mentioning only that he had worked for a company that didn't support him after he got hurt, leading him to move into security work. I suggested he should have sought legal action, that he might have been entitled to compensation for an industrial accident, but he dismissed the idea, saying the best thing he could do was move on. His evasive responses only deepened my suspicion about his past. Parker didn't share common interests with the rest of us. He wasn't into sports, didn't watch movies like many of us did, and he didn't drink or smoke. He had no family, no wife, kids, or girlfriend, which made him even more of an enigma. Frustrated by his aloofness, I finally asked him what he did in his spare time. He replied that he worked out, tinkered with his car, or read books, specifically mentioning some obscure Russian authors whose names were beyond me. Given that neither of us were particularly avid readers, this revelation was surprising. It seemed like we had finally found a common ground when Parker talked about his 2006 Pontiac GTO, and for the rest of that shift, we focused our conversations on cars. It was the most substantial interaction I'd had with him, and for a moment, I thought maybe he wasn't as dangerous as I feared. I even told my supervisor that I believed Parker wasn't going to turn on us with a machete, trying to convince him that Parker was more of a threat to his former associates than to us. To my relief, my intuition proved correct, at least for a while. But as fate would have it, things took a dark turn during our fourth night together. It was supposed to be the fifth shift, and the night had been eerily quiet. Parker and I decided to take a break at the guard shack near the main entrance for some coffee. I was sitting at the desk, leafing through yesterday's newspaper left behind by a previous guard, while Parker stood by the window, staring into the darkness and muttering to himself. Half a year ago, this behavior would have seemed downright creepy, but after several months of working with him, I had become accustomed to his quirks. Still didn't sit right with me, though, especially when I heard him mention something about something coming up the road. Curious, I glanced outside. The road leading to the plant was deserted at this hour. No one should be approaching unless they were part of the security team, and they always called ahead. When I didn't see any headlights, I assumed Parker was just being paranoid, his jumpy nature making a mountain out of a molehill. The boss had even encouraged us to be vigilant, so I took his concerns seriously but didn't see any immediate threat. I responded to Parker's comment by asking if he was sure there was something out there, but he insisted that the headlights had been switched off, yet something was still there. Before I could process his words, headlights suddenly illuminated the darkness outside the shack, so bright they were almost blinding. Instinctively, I began to shout, asking who those people were. In that split second, Parker turned towards me with an intense, angry expression and lunged at me. I staggered back, bewildered, and demanded what he was thinking. Without stopping, he tackled me to the ground with surprising force, knocking the wind out of me. Panic surged through me as I struggled to comprehend what was happening. Was Parker an undercover agent trying to eliminate me? Or was this part of some inside job to protect his secrets? In the midst of our brief struggle, the shack exploded in a violent shower of glass and sparks. The sound of automatic weapons filled the air, and I could hear a barrage of bullets slamming into the structure. The glass shattered first, followed by ricochets and sparks flying everywhere. A bullet pierced the light above our heads, plunging the shack into darkness and showering us with broken glass. Throughout the chaos, Parker remained on top of me, preventing me from thrashing wildly. It was then that I realized Parker wasn't trying to hurt me. He was protecting me. The gunfire ceased almost as abruptly as it had started, and Parker quickly rolled off me before scurrying out of the shack in a crouched position. I wanted to follow him or run for my life, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. My mind raced with thoughts of automatic weapons and the deadly intent of the attackers. I wasn't certified to carry a weapon, but Parker had, which explained why he had managed to subdue me so effectively. Our only weapon, aside from my flashlight and pepper spray, was now gone with him. As I lay there, vulnerable and terrified, Parker seemed to understand that our window of escape was closing. He had likely recognized that the assailants were reloading and had preemptively left the shack to avoid another volley of bullets. Realizing the imminent danger, I knew that standing up to run would be futile. Instead, I remained still, hoping the shooting would cease and giving myself a moment to assess the situation. When the gunfire finally stopped, the only sound was the approaching footsteps of the attackers, closing in on the shack. I was armed with nothing but my pepper spray, and the attackers were mere steps away from finishing what they had started. Desperate, I decided to make some noise, yelling that if they took one step closer, I would open fire with my shotgun, even though I didn't have one. The footsteps halted, and a voice emerged from the darkness. It was gravelly, rough, and lacked any trace of emotion. The man outside demanded to know where McCabe was, but I had no idea who he was. Our team didn't have anyone by that name, so I informed them that there was no McCabe there and that they had likely made a mistake. The tension was palpable as the attackers debated among themselves. One of them insisted that McCabe was there and respected my attempt to protect him, but claimed it wasn't worth dying over. I reiterated that I had no idea what he was talking about and that no one needed to die due to their mistake. After a tense pause, the lead attacker began a countdown, giving me 3 chances to provide the information they sought before they would kill me. As the countdown began, my mind raced with thoughts of survival. I considered diving out of the broken window and using the shack as cover to escape into the night. But with bullets flying and the attackers closing in, I knew it was too risky. Instead, I waited, bracing myself for the inevitable. The countdown reached 1, and just as the attacker began to shout again, a barrage of gunfire erupted. I heard about 10 shots, followed by a scream and more gunfire. At first, I thought they were simply shooting at the shack in hopes of hitting me, but I soon realized that their aim was directed elsewhere. As the shooting continued, I saw that the bullets weren't penetrating the shack. Someone was shielding us. It became clear that Parker had anticipated the attack and had set up some form of protection to prevent me from being killed. The realization dawned on me that Parker had orchestrated this entire scenario to keep me safe from the real threat outside. Just as the attackers began to lower their weapons, footsteps approached the shack once more. Suddenly, Parker appeared before me, a pistol in hand and a determined, almost feral look in his eyes. He barked at me to get out, warning that more of them were coming. In that moment, my legs finally responded, and I didn't hesitate. I didn't have time to thank Parker or ask any questions. I bolted towards the plant's security office, seeking shelter and hoping that our supervisor had witnessed the chaos and would call the authorities. As I ran, my heart pounded in my chest, and adrenaline surged through my veins, propelling me forward with a desperate need to survive. Once inside the security office, Parker and I watched the security cameras until the police arrived. The footage showed nothing but the guard shack, bathed in the headlights of the attacker's vehicle. Neither Parker nor the men he was supposedly protecting appeared on the cameras again. When the police reviewed the footage and the paperwork we provided, they dismissed it all as a misunderstanding. The only thing they confirmed was that Parker's face matched that of a man named McCabe, who had a history with a prison gang until his relationships deteriorated for reasons unknown. From that day forward, Parker, or McCabe as the police now referred to him, remained a shadowy figure on the run. The incident left us all shaken, a constant reminder of the thin line between safety and chaos. To this day, I wonder what Parker did to anger those men so severely and why he risked everything to protect me. Perhaps it was a debt owed, a promise kept, or something far more sinister. Whatever the truth, Parker's legacy at the steel plant became a cautionary tale among the guards, a story of trust, betrayal, and the enigmatic figure who walked the night with scars that ran deeper than the surface. Years have passed since that harrowing night, but the memory of Parker's actions and the mystery surrounding McCabe still haunt me. The steel plant continues to operate, its massive structures standing as silent witnesses to the events that unfolded within its grounds. Sometimes, during quiet nights, I find myself glancing towards the main entrance, half expecting to see Parker's dark eyes watching from the shadows. The scars he bore were more than just physical. They were marks of a troubled past and the lengths one man would go to protect another. In the aftermath, our team disbanded, each of us seeking different paths to move on from the trauma we experienced. I couldn't shake the feeling that Parker's story was far from over, that his past was still catching up with him, and that his protection was a fleeting act in a larger, more dangerous game. The steel plant, once a symbol of strength and industry, became a place of fear and uncertainty, where the line between friend and foe was blurred by secrets and unspoken truths. Occasionally, whispers of McCabe's activities would surface, rumors of a man with a violent past, linked to a prison gang that had splintered under mysterious circumstances. These stories only added to the legend of Parker, painting him as both a protector and a hunted man, forever caught between two worlds. I couldn't help but feel a connection to him, a bond forged in the fires of fear and survival, even as I struggled to understand his true motives. As the years rolled by, the steel plant saw new faces and fresh shifts, but the memory of that fateful week lingered in the minds of those who stayed. It served as a stark reminder that even in the most mundane of jobs, the line between normalcy and nightmare could be razor thin. Parker, or McCabe, became a ghost story among the guards, a cautionary tale about the dangers that lurk in the shadows and the unexpected heroes who emerge when least expected. In retrospect, working those night shifts with Parker was a pivotal moment in my life, shaping my understanding of trust, fear, and the complexities of human nature. It taught me that sometimes the most unlikely individuals carry the heaviest burdens, and that appearances can be deceiving. Parker's enigmatic presence and his ultimate act of protection left an indelible mark on me, a reminder that in the darkest of times, allies can come from the most unexpected places. To this day, I carry the lessons learned from those nights at the steel plant. Whether Parker is still out there, haunted by his past and pursued by those seeking retribution, remains a mystery. But his legacy lives on, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unspoken bonds forged in the face of unimaginable fear. As I recount this story, I hope it serves as a chilling reminder that beneath the surface of everyday life, darkness can lie in wait, and heroes can emerge from the most unlikely of places to protect us when we need it most. In the serene heart of rural Gloucestershire lies the quaint town of Winchcombe, a place where time seems to stand still amidst its timeless charm. Home to about 5,000 proud residents, Winchcombe is the epitome of an idyllic English village, boasting a picturesque village green, a trio of eternally inviting pubs, and the imposing presence of a 15th century Tudor castle that watches over the town's outskirts like a silent guardian. For Father Thomas, serving as a priest at St. Nicholas's Catholic Church here for the past 3.5 years, has been nothing short of a dream come true. The tranquility of the town, combined with its rich historical tapestry, offers both solace and purpose, making it a sanctuary for its inhabitants and a haven for those seeking spiritual guidance. Yet, beneath Winchcombe's serene exterior lies a history steeped in mystery and shadowed by sinister occurrences that whisper through the ages like a persistent, unseen fog. Father Thomas often finds himself contemplating the deep roots of the town, wondering how much of the ancient rites and rituals still influence the present day. The local museum narrates the story of Winchcombe's origins as a Roman hamlet around the mid-1st century. However, even older remnants are found atop Cleve Hill, 3 miles southeast of the town center, a Neolithic burial ground dating back 5 millennia. The ancient inhabitants used chambered long barrows for rites and rituals, creating a profound connection between the living and the dead. This focus on collective memory and kinship imbued the community with a sense of unity and reverence for their ancestors, a concept that deeply resonates with Father Thomas's vocation. But despite the peace and purpose he finds in his work, Father Thomas cannot ignore the unsettling feeling that Winchcombe's idyllic charm masks darker undercurrents. Unexplained events and eerie occurrences that seem to echo both ancient turmoil and more recent tragedies. These shadows of the past intertwine with the present, creating an uneasy tension that lingers in the air, especially during the quiet nights when the village seems to hold its breath, waiting for something unseen to unfold. One of the most haunting chapters in Winchcombe's history revolves around the scandal that rocked Hales Abbey in the 16th century. For centuries, the monastery had been the custodian of a religious relic known as the Holy Blood, a meticulously crafted wooden box containing a glass vial purported to hold the blood of Jesus Christ. According to legend, the blood had seeped from Christ's feet during the crucifixion and was delivered to the monastery by a crusading knight in the 13th century. The knight claimed the relic had been bestowed upon him by the monks of Hermitage near the Dead Sea after they defended the monastery from a Saracen raid. The monks were adamant about the relic's authenticity, asserting that it had once belonged to one of Christ's apostles. Following its interment in Hales Abbey, the holy blood became a symbol of immense reverence, elevating the monastery to prominence across England. However, in the 16th century, the relic was mysteriously stolen. The official narrative suggested that a group of professional thieves, orchestrated by a wealthy benefactor, had executed the theft. Yet, as history shows, neither the thieves nor the buyer were ever apprehended. This unresolved mystery led many to believe that the holy blood remained hidden, awaiting its inevitable discovery. Others, however, offered more unsettling explanations, suggesting that the theft unleashed a series of dark events that would forever stain Winchcombe's history. The absence of the holy blood seemed to unleash a malevolent force, one that thrived in the shadows and manipulated the lives of those who dwelled in the town. Shortly after the theft, a royally sanctioned witchfinder arrived in Gloucestershire. King James I, obsessed with eradicating witchcraft and heresy, dispatched his chief witchfinder to uncover any signs of devilry linked to the stolen relic. This investigation spiraled into the infamous witch trials that ensnared Joan Flower and her two daughters, Margaret and Philippa, accused of cursing the Earl of Rutland. Their lives were torn apart as half a dozen of the Earl's family and friends met sudden, tragic ends. The town, gripped by fear and superstition, hunted down Margaret and Philippa, leading to their arrests and eventual executions for communing with the devil. Their mother, heartbroken and impoverished, died in prison shortly after. Years later, another woman, Alice Cullern, faced similar accusations of using curses and charms to cause illness and death. Convicted based on testimonies from her own neighbors, she was executed to the cheers of the gathered townsfolk. These events cemented a belief among many that the holy blood was used in profane rituals, bringing a great and terrible darkness upon the region. Even centuries later, some residents of Winchcombe still whisper about the relic's curse, maintaining that the relic's theft was the catalyst for the town's descent into fear and hysteria. Over the years, unsettling graffiti began to appear around town, symbols and messages that went beyond the usual teenage vandalism, hinting at a lingering malevolent presence that refused to fade with time. These eerie markings became a testament to the town's haunted legacy, leaving an indelible mark on its otherwise charming facade. As Father Thomas delved deeper into the town's history, he realized how these ancient shadows intertwined with the present, creating an uneasy tension that lingered in the air. While Winchcombe now enjoyed a life of peace, harmony, and simplicity, Father Thomas had to endure a living nightmare to achieve it. The path to priesthood was neither swift nor painless. It required years of discernment, a decade of rigorous training, and the mentorship of experienced priests before one could even hope to lead a parish. When Father Thomas arrived in Winchcombe in early 2020, St. Nicholas's Church was under the care of Father Michael, an elderly priest who had faithfully served since the mid-1970s. Set to retire in the summer of 2021, Father Michael was to mentor Father Thomas for 18 months before he would take over the parish, an unusually short period, accompanied by a significant caveat. Father Michael, nearly 79 years old when Father Thomas first met him, had been in a state of mental decline for some time. His condition had become a source of deep concern among the parishioners, who spoke of his strange sermons, troubling outbursts, and unsettling remarks during cloistered conversations. The Bishop of Clifton, their superior, deemed it imperative to keep Father Michael's deteriorating state under wraps to prevent it from escalating into a full-blown scandal. Securing the prestigious Winchcombe parish was contingent upon Father Thomas's ability to manage Father Michael's behavior discreetly. Initially, Father Thomas's time with Father Michael was smooth. In December 2019, he had visited Winchcombe for the first time, meeting Father Michael over afternoon tea and engaging in long conversations about ecclesiastical matters. Contrary to the warnings he had received, Father Michael was not the frail, incoherent figure he had feared. Instead, he was sharp, witty, and possessed a vast knowledge of theology and church history. His demeanor was assertive yet welcoming, embodying the wisdom and humility expected of a priest. This first impression was deceiving, however, as the true extent of Father Michael's mental struggles was yet to surface. By early February 2020, Father Thomas had moved into the spare room of the cottage behind St. Nicholas's Church, a quaint abode with a thatched roof and a small rose garden. The first month under Father Michael's tutelage was marked by a seamless transition into his new life. He assisted Father Michael with Mass, baptisms, weddings, funerals, and various pastoral duties. They visited hospitals and nursing homes together, and Father Thomas learned the intricacies of preparing sermons and homilies. His responsibilities also included organizing Bible study groups, youth meetings, and managing the church's daily administrative tasks. The warmth of the Christmas season provided a comforting backdrop, masking any signs of Father Michael's declining mental state. However, as the initial months passed, subtle changes began to emerge. One evening, after a hearty dinner, Father Michael and Father Thomas sat enjoying tea and biscuits when their conversation took a dark turn. Discussing parish funerals naturally led them to the topic of death itself, a subject not uncommon among those who dedicate their lives to spiritual guidance. But this time, Father Michael's demeanor was different. He spoke with a melancholic tone, revealing his envy of the holy martyrs, those whose unwavering faith had cost them their lives. He expressed a profound sadness that, despite his years of service, he had not achieved martyrdom. His fixation on these saints went beyond admiration. It bordered on obsession. Father Michael recounted the brutal executions of various saints. Saint Sebastian, who survived initial attempts on his life only to be mercilessly beaten to death. Saint Bartholomew, skinned alive before his beheading. Saint Catherine of Alexandria, whose limbs were shattered on the breaking wheel. And Saint Agnes, whose execution pyre failed to consume her due to her unwavering faith. He spoke of Saint Perpetua and Saint Felicity, torn apart by wild animals in the Roman Colosseum before being put to the sword. These stories, filled with unimaginable suffering and unwavering faith, seemed to fuel Father Michael's dark envy. He confessed that he envied not only the martyrs themselves but also those who inflicted such torment, believing they were part of God's plan to elevate these souls to sainthood. As Father Michael delved deeper into his macabre fascination, his behavior became increasingly erratic. His eyes, once sharp and clear, now flickered with a manic intensity as he recounted the gruesome details of each martyr's demise. His hands trembled, and his voice wavered between fervent conviction and desperate despair. Father Thomas found himself deeply unsettled by Father Michael's confession, yet it was not entirely unexpected. He had been warned that Father Michael might exhibit unusual behaviors, but witnessing it firsthand was both shocking and terrifying. Concerned for Father Michael's well-being, Father Thomas reported the incident to the Bishop of Clifton, hoping for guidance and support. Instead, he was met with indifference. The bishop dismissed his concerns, urging him to continue his duties without addressing the underlying issues. This lack of response only heightened Father Thomas's anxiety, as it became clear that the church's hierarchy prioritized maintaining appearances over addressing the genuine mental health crisis plaguing Father Michael. As time went on, Father Michael's condition deteriorated further. He began experiencing more frequent and severe episodes of mania and depression, often leaving Father Thomas feeling helpless and fearful for his safety and his parishioners. His conversations grew more disjointed, and his behavior became increasingly unpredictable. There were nights when he would lock himself away, muttering incoherently about divine signs and martyrdom, and days when he would burst into fits of rage over the most trivial matters. The isolation brought on by the lockdowns in early 2020 exacerbated Father Michael's condition. Prolonged seclusion and the bleakness of the British winter took a toll on his mental health, pushing him deeper into the shadows of his own mind. Father Thomas found himself locking his door at night, fearing that Father Michael might harm himself or others in his growing instability. Despite these challenges, the easing of lockdowns in the autumn of 2020 provided a much-needed respite for Father Michael. Reintegrating into public life allowed him to regain some semblance of routine and focus, albeit temporarily. The festive atmosphere of the Christmas season seemed to lift his spirits, and for a while he appeared to be in control of his thoughts and emotions. However, this fragile peace was short-lived. As New Year's Day passed, the reintroduction of restrictions led to another swift decline in Father Michael's mental state. He became fixated on the idea that he was about to receive a divine sign, an event he believed would mark his martyrdom. His nightly communications with the angel he claimed to see became more frequent and intense, disrupting his sleep and further destabilizing his mental health. Conversations that once centered around theology and pastoral duties now revolved around visions of martyrdom and divine missions. One particularly harrowing evening, Father Michael confided in Father Thomas that the angel had promised him a sign that would confirm his path to martyrdom. A sign embodied by the Winchcombe meteorite, a celestial event he believed was a divine omen. Although scientifically explained as a mere meteor shower, Father Michael saw it as a celestial affirmation of his destiny, reinforcing his belief that his death would serve a higher purpose. On February 28, 2021, the culmination of Father Michael's deteriorating mental state came to a tragic end. That morning, he appeared composed and eager to administer Mass, a stark contrast to his recent erratic behavior. The service proceeded flawlessly, with parishioners praising his revitalized presence. Over tea and custard creams, Father Thomas cautiously inquired about his sudden improvement. Father Michael revealed that the angel had finally given him the sign he had been waiting for, a sign that he was destined to be martyred that very night by someone standing in the field with him. As the evening progressed, Father Michael adhered to his usual bedtime routine, seemingly normal. But at 9:47 p.m., he emerged from the cottage, fully dressed, and began to prepare himself. When Father Thomas asked where he was going, Father Michael responded coldly, "You're going to follow me." Without hesitation, Father Thomas followed him into the darkness, his heart pounding with fear and confusion. They walked together into a secluded field near Silk Mill Lane, where Father Michael stopped and revealed a small penknife from his pocket. The blade glinted ominously in the pale moonlight. Panic surged through Father Thomas as he realized the severity of the situation. Desperate to prevent tragedy, he dialed the local police, explaining that Father Michael was having another of his severe episodes. The dispatcher assured him that officers would arrive shortly. As Father Thomas attempted to reason with Father Michael, urging him to put down the knife, Father Michael remained eerily calm. He spoke of waiting for the sign, as instructed by the angel, and refused to relent. Moments later, the blue flashing lights of a police car appeared in the distance. Father Thomas called out to the officers, informing them of Father Michael's possession of a knife. One of the officers approached, wielding an electric stun gun, and attempted to dissuade Father Michael from his intended action. In that critical moment, a great green flash illuminated the sky, a meteor streaking across the heavens, followed by a brilliant white streak of light. The sky was momentarily ablaze with celestial fire, and a thunderous boom echoed through the night. Father Michael looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and determination. He declared that his question had been answered and that he was to be martyred by the very man standing beside him, Father Thomas. Without warning, Father Michael lunged at Father Thomas with the knife raised above his head. The officers reacted swiftly, and the stun gun discharged, striking him with a surge of electricity. Father Michael collapsed to the ground, unconscious, and was immediately transported to the hospital. Despite assurances that he had a chance of recovery, Father Michael never regained consciousness. The combination of the stun gun's charge and an undiagnosed heart condition proved fatal, and he passed away in the early hours of the following morning. As the first to hear the news, Father Thomas was overwhelmed with a complex mix of emotions: grief for Father Michael, fear for his own safety, and a chilling realization that Father Michael's final moments had been precisely as he had prophesied. Father Michael had believed that the Winchcombe meteorite was a divine sign of his impending martyrdom, and in a twisted sense, his actions confirmed his belief. Whether it was mere coincidence or something far more sinister, the meteorite's appearance seemed to validate his deepest fears and obsessions. The incident added to the long list of strange and unsettling occurrences that had punctuated Winchcomb's history. The town, with its idyllic facade, had a penchant for harboring dark secrets and unexplained phenomena. Father Michael's death became another chapter in the town's enigmatic narrative, intertwining the spiritual with the supernatural in a way that left many parishioners questioning the very fabric of their reality. The church tried to distance itself from the tragedy, maintaining that Father Michael's actions were the result of severe mental illness. However, whispers of the Holy Blood's curse and the lingering presence of malevolent spirits continued to circulate among the townsfolk. Some believed that the relic's theft had unleashed an enduring darkness, one that manifested in the form of Father Michael's tortured soul. As Father Thomas continued to serve the parish, he found himself haunted by Father Michael's final words and the lingering questions they raised. Did the meteorite truly signal his martyrdom? Or was it a mere coincidence in the tangled web of Winchcomb's history? The incident forced him to confront the delicate balance between faith and reason, and the thin line that separates divine intervention from psychological breakdown. On quiet nights, Father Thomas sometimes found himself gazing toward the fields where Father Michael met his end, wondering if his spirit still roamed the land, forever tethered by the unresolved mysteries of his life and death. The ancient burial grounds on Cleve Hill seemed to hold secrets that intertwined with the present, creating a tapestry of history and the supernatural that defied explanation. Winchcombe remained a town of contrasts, where beauty and serenity coexisted with shadows of the past and whispers of the unknown. The legacy of the Holy Blood, the witch trials, and Father Michael's haunting final moments wove together to create a narrative that was as captivating as it was unsettling. As Father Thomas sat in the quietude of the church, reflecting on the events that had transpired, he was reminded that every town has its secrets, and every history its ghosts. In Winchcombe, those secrets were alive, whispering through the corridors of time, ensuring that the past never truly faded away, but continued to influence the present in ways that were both profound and terrifying. Father Thomas often pondered the influence of ancestral spirits on the town's present-day occurrences. Were the strange events he observed merely echoes of ancient rites and rituals, or were they the shadows cast by more recent tragedies and unresolved mysteries? The answers seemed elusive, hidden behind the veil of Winchcombe's picturesque facade. He found solace in his faith, yet the intertwining of history and the supernatural left him grappling with questions that challenged his understanding of reality and the divine. In the months following Father Michael's death, Father Thomas took on the mantle of leading the parish, striving to maintain the harmony and peace that the town cherished. However, the echoes of the past continued to resonate, manifesting in subtle yet unsettling ways. Unexplained noises echoed through the church halls, shadows danced at the edge of his vision, and whispers seemed to emanate from the ancient burial grounds atop Cleve Hill. The townsfolk, aware of the historical weight their home carried, shared tales of inexplicable occurrences and sightings of apparitions that haunted the village's serene landscape. Father Thomas, determined to uphold his duties and provide spiritual guidance, also sought to uncover the truth behind these phenomena. He delved into historical records, consulted with local historians, and even reached out to paranormal investigators in hopes of finding rational explanations for the town's eerie happenings. Yet, with each discovery, the lines between faith, history, and the supernatural became increasingly blurred, leaving him with more questions than answers. One particularly stormy night, as Father Thomas sat alone in the church, poring over old manuscripts, a loud crash echoed through the building. Startled, he rushed to investigate, only to find one of the ancient stained glass windows shattered, shards of colored glass scattered across the floor. The sight sent a chill down his spine, and an overwhelming sense of foreboding settled over him. As he cleaned up the mess, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes were observing his every move. Determined to confront his fears, Father Thomas decided to hold a special mass dedicated to the saints whose martyrdom had captivated Father Michael's troubled mind. The service was meant to honor their sacrifices and seek their blessings for the town's continued peace. As he delivered the homily, his voice wavering with emotion, he felt a strange presence envelop the church, a presence both comforting and eerie, as if the very souls of the martyrs were there, listening and watching. After the service, as the parishioners mingled and offered their thanks, Father Thomas received a visit from an elderly woman named Mrs. Eleanor Whitaker. She was a lifelong resident of Winchcombe, known for her deep knowledge of the town's history and her keen intuition. She approached Father Thomas with a knowing look in her eyes, sensing the turmoil he was experiencing. "Father Thomas," she began, her voice gentle yet firm, "there are things in Winchcombe that go beyond our understanding. The spirits of the past linger here, intertwined with our lives in ways we can't always comprehend. You must tread carefully, for some truths are best left buried." Her words hung heavily in the air, a warning that Father Thomas couldn't quite grasp. As she left, he couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Whitaker held the key to unraveling the mysteries that plagued his beloved town. Driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, he decided to seek her out the following day, hoping she could shed some light on the dark undercurrents that seemed to flow through Winchcombe. The next morning, Father Thomas found Mrs. Whitaker tending to her rose garden, the same one that bordered the church cottage. He approached her with a mixture of apprehension and determination, ready to uncover the truths that had long been shrouded in mystery. "Mrs. Whitaker," he greeted her, "I need your help to understand the strange occurrences in our town. There's so much history here, and I fear some of it may still be very much alive." She looked up from her gardening, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of knowledge and experience. "Father Thomas, Winchcombe's history is not just a series of events. It's a living entity, breathing through time and space. The holy blood, the witch trials, Father Michael's final moments. They're all threads in a tapestry that weaves the past into our present. To understand one, you must understand them all." Her cryptic response only deepened Father Thomas's resolve. He spent the following weeks immersing himself in the town's archives, uncovering layers of history that painted a picture of a community both blessed and cursed. He discovered tales of other relics, hidden places of power, and accounts of inexplicable phenomena that had been dismissed as folklore or superstition. One night, as he pored over an old diary belonging to a monk from Hales Abbey, Father Thomas stumbled upon a passage that sent shivers down his spine. It spoke of a ritual intended to protect the holy blood from falling into the wrong hands, a ritual that required the utmost purity of faith and the sacrifice of a chosen individual. The ritual was never completed, leaving the town vulnerable to the dark forces it was meant to guard against. As Father Thomas delved deeper, he began to experience his own unsettling encounters. Late-night apparitions of shadowy figures glided through the church corridors. Whispers echoed in the empty pews, and an overwhelming sense of dread seemed to permeate the air. The once peaceful sanctuary now felt like a battleground between light and darkness, faith and fear. Determined to protect his parish and the town he loved, Father Thomas sought the guidance of a renowned exorcist from a neighboring region. The exorcist, a stern and seasoned priest named Father Gregory, arrived in Winchcombe with a mission to cleanse the church of any malevolent spirits that might be lingering. Together, they performed rites and rituals, attempting to seal away the darkness that had seeped into the town's sacred grounds. Despite their efforts, the presence of the past proved resilient. Father Thomas found himself battling not only the external forces but also his own inner turmoil. The weight of the town's history, combined with the haunting legacy of Father Michael, left him questioning his faith and his ability to lead his parish through such turbulent times. One fateful night, as a full moon cast an eerie glow over Winchcombe, Father Thomas received a visit from an apparition resembling Father Michael. The ghostly figure approached him, eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. "Father Thomas," the apparition whispered, "the ritual remains incomplete. The darkness will consume us all unless the holy blood is restored. terrified yet resolute. Father Thomas realized that the key to saving Winchcombe lay in uncovering the truth behind the Holy Blood's theft and completing the ancient ritual that Father Michael had once spoken of. He embarked on a quest to locate the missing relic, navigating through hidden passages beneath Hale's Abbey, deciphering cryptic symbols, and facing the town's darkest secrets. As he delved deeper into the mystery, Father Thomas discovered that the Holy Blood was not merely a relic but a vessel of immense power, capable of both great good and unspeakable evil. Its theft had not only disrupted the balance between the living and the dead, but had also awakened a dormant darkness that now threatened to engulf Winchcombe. The climax of his journey led him to the very heart of Cleve Hill, where the Neolithic burial ground stood as a testament to the town's ancient past. Here, amidst the stones and earth, Father Thomas performed the long-forgotten ritual, guided by the spirits of the past and the unwavering faith that had brought him this far. The air thickened with tension as the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual blurred, and the true extent of Winchcombe's haunted legacy was finally revealed. In a burst of light and sound, the darkness that had plagued the town was dispelled, restoring peace and balance to Winchcombe once more. Father Thomas stood amidst the ancient stones, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment and relief. The spirits of the past had been appeased, and the town was free from the shadows that had long haunted its streets. Yet, as Father Thomas looked out over the village green, bathed in the gentle glow of dawn, he knew that Winchcombe's history was far from over. The town's secrets were deeply intertwined with its present, ensuring that the line between reality and the supernatural remained ever so thin. As he continued his service at St. Nicholas's Church, Father Thomas carried with him the lessons of the past, ever vigilant against the darkness that could resurface at any moment. Winchcombe, with its timeless charm and hidden mysteries, stood as a beacon of both beauty and fear, a town where the past and present coexisted in a delicate balance, forever entwined in a dance of light and shadow. For Father Thomas, every day was a testament to the resilience of faith and the enduring power of history, reminding him that in the quiet corners of Winchcombe, the true horror lay not in the supernatural, but in the depths of human fear and the relentless pursuit of peace amidst the darkness. In the early mornings of 2013, I served as a deputy manager at a hardware store nestled in the quiet town of Delaware. Each day began with the ritualistic opening of the store, powering up the computers, getting the registers humming, and diving into the day's logistics. One of the most crucial parts of my morning routine was checking our answering machine. It was my lifeline to the outside world, informing me of any last-minute delivery changes, unexpected arrivals, or most importantly, if anyone had called in sick. With a steaming cup of coffee in hand, I would listen to the usual routine messages, feeling the comforting rhythm of predictability before the day truly began. Then, one seemingly ordinary morning, everything changed. As I hit play on the next message, a voice I instantly recognized sent a jolt through me. Greg's voice. Greg was an older gentleman, nearing retirement, and undeniably one of the kindest souls I had the privilege to work with. His absence that morning was unusual, and hearing his voice brought a fleeting sense of relief. Perhaps he was simply unwell and needed the day off. But what he said next shattered that comfort. "Good morning, ladies. I'm real sorry, but I don't think I'll be making it into work tomorrow morning. I'm gonna see Sherry." Sherry, a name that struck me as peculiar. Greg had always been devoted to his work and rarely shared personal details, except for his deep love for his late wife, Sherry. Curiosity gnawed at me, and I approached Janine, a fellow coworker, to uncover the meaning behind Greg's cryptic message. Her reaction spoke volumes. Sherry was no longer with us, and Greg's mention of seeing her was out of the ordinary. She hesitated before admitting, "I think he better go make some phone calls." The ambiguity of his message unsettled me. Greg had only ever visited Sherry's grave on their anniversaries, birthdays, and occasionally during the holidays. This wasn't a typical sick day excuse. Determined to understand, I attempted to reach Greg multiple times, his cell, his home phone, but each call went unanswered. Just as frustration began to mount, my phone rang again, almost immediately after I had hung up. It wasn't Greg. It was his son, delivering the harrowing news. Greg had passed away peacefully during the night. The scene painted by Greg's son was both serene and haunting. Greg had meticulously prepared for his departure, watering plants, paying bills, donning his best suit, and ensuring everything was in order. He had even left messages for us and his choir director, indicating he wouldn't need a ride to practice. There were no signs of struggle, no medications left behind, nothing to suggest he had hastily ended his life. It was as if he had simply slipped away in his recliner, embracing death with a calm that belied the turmoil such a loss would naturally bring. What made Greg's passing more unsettling wasn't the act itself, but the profound sense of inevitability he seemed to possess. Did he truly know it was his time? Was there an inexplicable peace in knowing one's end was near? The unanswered questions gnawed at me, more so than the traumatic memory of a deadly car crash I had witnessed years earlier. That accident, where a family of 4 lost their lives in a horrifying pileup, was terrifying in its chaos and finality. But Greg's death lingered in my mind because it touched upon the universal fear of the unknown, the moment when life quietly fades away without warning, leaving behind a trail of questions and unfinished thoughts. As days turned into weeks, the memory of Greg's calm departure haunted me. I found myself staring at his empty workspace, imagining the final moments he must have experienced. Was there something he knew that we didn't? Did he feel a profound connection to Sherry that gave him the courage to face death without fear? The tranquility of his passing contrasted sharply with the violent chaos of the car accident, highlighting the eerie diversity of how life can end. Winchcombe, our small town, had always been a place where stories intertwined with daily life, creating a tapestry of shared experiences and whispered legends. Greg's death became another thread in that intricate weave, a story that residents would recount with a mix of sadness and bewilderment. It served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the mysterious ways in which it can conclude. Each time I passed by his old spot at the hardware store, memories surged forth. His gentle smile, his unwavering dedication, and now, the inexplicable peace of his final moments. In the quiet solitude of my thoughts, I pondered the nature of death and the human condition. How many of us face our end with such grace? Is there an inner knowing that we are nearing our final breath, allowing us to embrace it without fear? Greg's story pushed me to explore these existential questions, delving into philosophies and beliefs about fate, destiny, and the afterlife. It was a journey that intertwined my professional responsibilities with a deeply personal quest for understanding. As time marched on, the initial shock of Greg's passing gave way to a profound sense of loss and introspection. The hardware store, once a place of routine and daily interactions, now stood as a silent testament to the unpredictability of life. Every morning, as I performed my duties, I carried with me the memory of Greg's calm departure, a ghostly presence that lingered in the corners of my mind. It was a constant reminder that beneath the surface of our orderly lives, there exists a realm of the unknown, where peace and fear coexist in a delicate balance. In the end, Greg's story remains etched in my memory, a chilling yet comforting tale of how one man's serene acceptance of death can leave an indelible mark on those he leaves behind. It serves as a poignant reminder that life is as fragile as it is mysterious, and that sometimes the most terrifying aspects are not the moments of chaos, but the quiet, inevitable conclusions that await us all. The early mornings of 2013 found me stepping into the bustling environment of a large retail store in Delaware, eager to embrace my role as a deputy manager. The store was a sprawling maze of aisles, each brimming with products and employees dedicated to their shifts. My daily routine was straightforward yet essential. Unlock the doors, power up the computers, ensure the registers were operational, and then dive into the morning's logistical challenges. Among these tasks, checking the answering machine stood out as the most critical part of my morning ritual. It was my gateway to understanding the day's potential disruptions. Whether deliveries had been delayed, shipments were arriving earlier than expected, or if any of my colleagues had called in sick. With a steaming cup of coffee in hand, I would sit down and listen to the usual routine messages, feeling a sense of normalcy settle in before the day truly began. However, one seemingly ordinary morning, everything changed. As I pressed play on the next message, a voice I instantly recognized sent a shiver down my spine. Greg's voice. Greg was one of those rare colleagues who exuded warmth and friendliness effortlessly. An older gentleman nearing retirement, he had always been the epitome of reliability and kindness, making him an invaluable member of our team. His absence that morning was unusual, and hearing his voice brought a fleeting sense of relief. Perhaps he was simply under the weather and needed the day off. But what he said next shattered that comfort. "Good morning, ladies. I'm real sorry, but I don't think I'll be making it into work tomorrow morning. I'm gonna see Sherry." Sherry. The name hung in the air like a ghostly whisper. Greg had always been reserved about his personal life, only occasionally mentioning his late wife during their shared moments of camaraderie. The thought that he might be seeing Sherry was both puzzling and concerning. Determined to uncover the truth, I approached Janine, a fellow coworker, hoping she could shed some light on Greg's cryptic message. Her reaction spoke volumes. Sherry was no longer with us, and Greg's mention of seeing her was far from ordinary. "I think he better go make some phone calls," Janine replied hesitantly, her eyes avoiding mine. Confusion gnawed at me. Greg had only ever visited Sherry's grave on their anniversaries, birthdays, and occasionally during the holidays. This wasn't a typical sick day excuse. Determined to understand, I attempted to reach Greg multiple times, his cell, his home phone, but each call went unanswered. Just as frustration began to mount, my phone rang again, almost immediately after I had hung up. It wasn't Greg. It was his son, delivering the harrowing news. Greg had passed away peacefully during the night. The scene painted by Greg's son was both serene and haunting. Greg had meticulously prepared for his departure, watering plants, paying bills, donning his best suit, and ensuring everything was in order. He had even left messages for us and his choir director, indicating he wouldn't need a ride to practice. There were no signs of struggle, no medications left behind, nothing to suggest he had hastily ended his life. It was as if he had simply slipped away in his recliner, embracing death with a calm that belied the turmoil such a loss would naturally bring. What made Greg's passing more unsettling wasn't the act itself, but the profound sense of inevitability he seemed to possess. Did he truly know it was his time? Was there an inexplicable peace in knowing one's end was near? The unanswered questions gnawed at me, more so than the traumatic memory of a deadly car crash I had witnessed years earlier. That accident, where a family of 4 lost their lives in a horrifying pileup, was terrifying in its chaos and finality. But Greg's death lingered in my mind because it touched upon the universal fear of the unknown, the moment when life quietly fades away without warning, leaving behind a trail of questions and unfinished thoughts. As days turned into weeks, the memory of Greg's calm departure haunted me. I found myself staring at his empty workspace, imagining the final moments he must have experienced. Was there something he knew that we didn't? Did he feel a profound connection to Sherry that gave him the courage to face death without fear? The tranquility of his passing contrasted sharply with the violent chaos of the car accident, highlighting the eerie diversity of how life can end. Winchcombe, our small town, had always been a place where stories intertwined with daily life, creating a tapestry of shared experiences and whispered legends. Greg's death became another thread in that intricate weave, a story that residents would recount with a mix of sadness and bewilderment. It served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the mysterious ways in which it can conclude. Each time I passed by his old spot at the hardware store, memories surged forth. His gentle smile, his unwavering dedication, and now, the inexplicable peace of his final moments. In the quiet solitude of my thoughts, I pondered the nature of death and the human condition. How many of us face our end with such grace? Is there an inner knowing that we are nearing our final breath, allowing us to embrace it without fear? Greg's story pushed me to explore these existential questions, delving into philosophies and beliefs about fate, destiny, and the afterlife. It was a journey that intertwined my professional responsibilities with a deeply personal quest for understanding. As time marched on, the initial shock of Greg's passing gave way to a profound sense of loss and introspection. The hardware store, once a place of routine and daily interactions, now stood as a silent testament to the unpredictability of life. Every morning, as I performed my duties, I carried with me the memory of Greg's calm departure, a ghostly presence that lingered in the corners of my mind. It was a constant reminder that beneath the surface of our orderly lives, there exists a realm of the unknown, where peace and fear coexist in a delicate balance. One night, almost a year after Greg's passing, the tranquility of my routine was shattered by a series of unsettling events. It began with small, inexplicable noises, a faint tapping at the window, shadows flickering at the edge of my vision. At first, I dismissed them as figments of my imagination, remnants of sleepless nights spent mulling over Greg's death. But as the nights grew colder and the shadows longer, the occurrences became more frequent and disturbing. I started finding notes slipped under my door, messages scrawled in hurried handwriting. "You shouldn't have ignored me. I'm still watching. We're not done." Panic set in as I realized that someone was observing me, tracking my every move. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls from unknown numbers, each one more threatening than the last. I blocked them all, hoping to regain a semblance of peace, but the harassment continued unabated. Desperate for help, I confided in a few trusted colleagues, but their responses were mixed. Some dismissed my fears as stress-induced paranoia, while others sympathized but offered little practical assistance. The isolation of Winchcombe, once a comforting blanket, now felt like a suffocating shroud, trapping me in a web of fear and uncertainty. One particularly harrowing evening, as I locked up the store and made my way to my car, the sky was a canvas of dark, foreboding clouds. The streets were eerily quiet, the usual hustle of the town silenced by the impending storm. As I approached my vehicle, my heart pounded in my chest. There, in the dim light, stood Greg, or rather, something that resembled him. His figure was shadowy, almost ethereal, and his presence exuded a chilling sense of malice. I froze, unable to move as he extended a hand towards me, his eyes hollow and devoid of life. "You shouldn't have ignored me," he whispered, his voice a haunting echo that seemed to reverberate through the empty streets. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs refused to obey, rooted to the spot by sheer terror. Suddenly, the apparition dissolved into the night, leaving me trembling and alone. My mind raced with questions. Was this a figment of my shattered psyche, a manifestation of my unresolved grief and fear? Or was there something more sinister at play, an unearthly force determined to torment me? Determined to reclaim my sense of safety, I sought professional help, delving into therapy sessions aimed at unraveling the tangled threads of my anxiety and trauma. Slowly, I began to piece together the puzzle of my fears, understanding that the ghostly figure of Greg was less a supernatural entity and more a symbol of my internal struggles. Yet, the fear lingered, a persistent shadow that refused to be dispelled. As the months passed, the harassment lessened but never fully ceased. I fortified my home with security systems, installed cameras, and took self-defense classes, all in a futile attempt to stave off the lingering dread. Yet, every creak in the night, every shadow that danced at the edge of my vision, served as a grim reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present specter of fear. Winchcombe, with its quaint charm and tight-knit community, had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and whispers. Greg's death, once a poignant reminder of life's unpredictability, had twisted into a tale of haunting and relentless pursuit, blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. Each day became a struggle to maintain my sanity, to hold onto the semblance of normalcy that had been so violently disrupted. My hope was that by sharing my story, others might find solace in knowing they are not alone, and perhaps, together, we could confront the lingering fears that haunt us. For in the quiet corners of Winchcombe, where shadows linger and whispers echo through the night, the true horror lies not in the supernatural, but in the depths of our own unresolved fears and the relentless pursuit of peace amidst the darkness. The sky felt like it was escalating, the tension mounting with each passing day, and I realized that this obsessive admirer, this relentless stalker, was only beginning his campaign against me. His initial confrontation in the dark car park was merely the prologue to a series of terrifying encounters that left me sleepless and constantly on edge. The once friendly colleague had morphed into a menacing presence, one that I couldn't escape despite my best efforts. The anonymity I sought now felt like a distant dream, as his relentless pursuit invaded every aspect of my life. Moving departments had only offered a temporary respite, and the harassment from afar continued to gnaw at my sense of security. The isolation I felt was suffocating, as if the very walls of my home were closing in, amplifying the fear that someone was always watching, always waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Each message, each eerie encounter, deepened my paranoia, making me question my own perceptions and sanity. The balance between maintaining a professional demeanor and protecting myself became increasingly difficult, as the line between reality and fear blurred into a nightmarish haze. The psychological toll was immense, as the constant state of alertness drained my energy and clouded my judgment. I couldn't trust my own thoughts, always second-guessing whether the shadows in my vision were real or imagined figments of my stressed mind. The relentless nature of his pursuit made me feel trapped, a prisoner in my own life, with no escape from the horror that was unfolding around me. As the days turned into nights filled with anxiety and dread, I realized that my story was far from over. The true terror wasn't just in the stalking itself, but in the helplessness of knowing that someone was determined to invade every corner of my existence, turning my everyday life into a living nightmare. The fear that this could be the last chapter of my short life loomed over me, an ever-present shadow that I couldn't shake off, despite my desperate attempts to reclaim my peace and safety. The escalation was relentless, and I found myself clinging to any semblance of hope that I could make it stop, knowing that there was only one way these things end. If the escalation didn't cease, the fear that I couldn't even bring myself to articulate the end result consumed me, leaving me in a state of perpetual terror, haunted by the relentless pursuit of a man who refused to let me go. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.